but entering the retail market was a huge step for us.
Like how you want to perceive yourself in the market.
It was a very difficult time, I think, for the business.
Do you think it's changed how you show up as a leader?
And it was honestly the most fun thing I've ever done. And it was stressful.
What do you think's missing in marketing right now?
When somebody rebrands, the general question is, has the company been dissolved?
Like you want to, in some ways, make him proud first.
I think if you've built brand loyalty, and by that I don't mean you're selling millions of products, but if people trust in you, I think as a person, you'll automatically gain respect within the market.
Let's restart everything. Let's replan the business model. Let's replan marketing. Let's replan everything. And then funnily enough, when I executed on those things changed. The results changed.
Work on yourself. Just work on yourself. Seriously. Like every day. Just be better every day.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast. Today's going to be a really special one because technically I'm actually interviewing my first client. Now, that sounds a bit weird, nearly 10 years in business now, but it is. So, welcome to me. Welcome back. It's been, I think it's actually been, nearly 4.5 years since we've actually seen each other?
The last time I remember, I think we were shooting something on top of a car park in Salisbury.
Yes, we did.
And that's got to be about 4.5 years ago at least. So yes, it's great to be back and great to see you after all these years as well.
I know. Yeah. Super good. I mean, you were actually under a different brand then.
That's right. We were. So our legal entity remains the same, but we have rebranded to Anand, which incidentally is our family surname as well. And that came about through some hard lessons, I think, in business. One of the ones being most probably that you never really stop learning, I think, and when you get to a point where you think you've kind of, worked everything out, there's like this curveball thrown at you. So that was sort of what happened with us as a company. There were some legal obligations that we had to meet, and the old brand no longer resonated or could technically be used moving forward. So I think it all came about because we entered retail as a business. Predominantly we are wholesale and hospitality, but entering the retail market was a huge step for us and sort of at a national airport as well. So when that came about, I mean, it was a huge shock to the system because we had just launched this huge sort of project. There was 2 or 3 in the pipeline, and then all been vetted and all sort of been mustered up with this brand, and then to all of a sudden launch something, and then I think it was about 3 weeks later we had something to say. There were some legal obligations that had to be fulfilled. It was a huge shock to the system. So it was a very difficult time, I think, for the business because I think being a director, I always say you have huge responsibilities for your staff and your company. And I think I felt at that time that, this was, do or die kind of thing. It was either we really got this going and sort of made the necessary adjustments. And we did. And, Anand was formed off the back of that. So, and it was honestly the most fun thing I've ever done. And it was stressful because, you're running this medium-sized operation. We employ up to 50 people, and all of a sudden you're rebranding, and everyone's question is why. And there's a fine line where you can tell someone why openly and why you can't. And the majority of the reason was, it was just something that we had to do as a business. So the rebrand came as a shock, but honestly, it really taught us a lot of valuable lessons from in there. Because I think off the back of the name, we actually found a voice as a company. I felt for a few years that we didn't really know what we were. And I think that's really weird to say for a company that was fairly well established. I mean, you visited before as well. But I felt with Anand, all of a sudden we're back to this blank canvas, right? And we're creating everything in reverse, which is the worst way to do it, don't get me wrong. But because it had to be done, it kind of forced our hand to look at aspects of business that we never had before. All of a sudden we're engaging marketing companies, we're engaging branding companies, we're engaging companies that help you find your voice. I didn't know those things even existed. And all of that came off the back of my mentor saying to me, look, this is one of those times as a businessman where you either go big or you go home, right? And for me, it was like, we got to go big here. Like, I've invested too much time in this. Like, I've invested too many years, those sleepless nights, everything, to just, pack up and be like, yeah, we're done here. No, we're going to go big, and we're going to spend big. And sometimes that's not the best solution, but we kept a control of that, because spending big wasn't just throwing money blindly at stuff. It was really taking our time, really looking at companies that met our ethos, but also companies that we felt genuinely wanted us to do well. So they didn't make us just feel like a number amongst their client base. And that was hard to narrow down, because we made some mistakes along the way there as well. And in hindsight, it's easy to say, these things happen. But at the time, when you're financially forking out money, it's a huge, huge deal. So, look, it was an amazing journey. And it's been a year since we've rebranded. And I think as a company, we couldn't be any happier than we are at the moment.
Do you think that maybe some people are really worried about rebrand? I mean, you kind of forced into it, but I think like maybe people who are listening who are maybe on the fence about like what do you gain from a rebrand? Was it just that voice and that like that really what I would call depth work when it comes to really understanding what your brand values are and like how you want to perceive yourself in the market? Would you say, or is it like if that's like a disconjointed? Because for some business, I think that can be really disconjointed for some people.
I mean, I'd answer that in reverse. So one thing you won't lose is your reputation, which was a huge aspect for us. It was, when somebody rebrands, the general question is, has the company been dissolved, or has something happened? Has the company gone bankrupt? Has there been a huge gross misconduct from somebody? And the thing is, like, you've got to get past that, because naturally as an individual, we would think that. And you've got to put yourself in the public domain as well as a director personally yourself and think from both sides. So for me, I think if you've built brand loyalty, and by that I don't mean you're selling millions of products, but if people trust in you, I think as a person, then you'll automatically, especially a small to medium-sized business, you'll automatically gain respect within the market. So we didn't realize how much respect we had amongst our clientele until the rebrand happened. And I think that's what carried us through. So I think there's this illusion that if I rebrand, I'll lose customers. And that's a general worry, because, of course, you need your finances to run a business. And your clients are your clients. You spend years and decades working with them, whatever, right? But those relationships can be ruined at the drop of a hat as well. A split-second bad decision. So I think what I've learned the most is that if you are genuine and you are genuinely there for your clients, and if they're not just a number to you, which is how we do things at Anand, then you will be absolutely fine, because people will carry through. And that's what I noticed, that all of our clients said, we don't care if this company is called ABC tomorrow, but we want to work with the same leadership that we're working with within this company. And that's what made me realize that, not that I didn't know people were important, but it made me realize how important the team that we had were and how dedicated they were. And that all stems from, I think personally, from you as a director and what your attitude is within the business, how you look after people, how do you go about daily life, and how much do those people matter to you as well. And that kind of proved to me that, those things mattered a huge deal to us as a company, and it filtered right through. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think for me it's important to appreciate where you've come from, but also then understand, like, sometimes we have a growing pain, right? Yeah. So it's we're shifting into a new brand, we're shifting into like scaling up, etc. But one of the quotes that you gave me very many years ago that has really stood apart, that I wanted to remind you of, but also ask you to apply some context to, is people are loyal to their needs.
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, how did you sort of, I guess that's a life lesson for a lot of people, but where's the story behind that?
So I think just sort of, I've been in business for about 10, 15 years myself, and I can't put a number on it now, to be honest with you, but it's been a very long time. And one of the things that you realize very early on is that it's very much a dog-eat-dog world. Like, as much as, you think you might be out there to set the agenda straight or to start this new, loving relationship with every single person. It never works out that way. And we realized very quickly that as a business, after surviving the first 5 years, like a lot of people are just loyal to their needs. Like when those needs are met, they will either move on or they'll no longer engage with you. And I mean, that's absolutely fine. It's a natural thing to happen as well. But to put it into context, I mean, if I look at how we operate with our clients at the moment, I don't think there's a single client that can say that, if their volumes drop with us, that we change our attitude towards them.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's the smallest client on our sort of, accounting system, or it's a big renowned sort of company, it makes no difference to us. We work personally with every single client and every single person that we work with. And that might mean along the way you have to accept that once their needs are fulfilled, that they no longer will engage with you. But to put it into sort of context, that quote at the time came from, it was one of the things that we've always steered away from as a company. Don't be those kind of companies, or that company that is all over a client when it's hot.
Yeah.
And when it's not, they don't want to know, or they don't want to help them out with anything. And there are some clients that we work with that, we did millions of pounds of business with before. And all of a sudden, they have engaged another company. But there are times where they still engage us when there's an emergency, and we would never turn them down, because you've got to remember that whether they've moved on as a client to another supplier, they were also once your client and made up the DNA of your business to be what it is today. So yeah, I mean, it's something you have to get comfortable with, I think, in business, and grow some thick skin around that, because people are loyal to their own needs, and it's just the way of the world.
For me, it's something that sort of, at the time, I think when you initially told me, I didn't really get it.
Yeah.
Right? And now I can say 6 years, 7 years down the road, I get it. And I think for me, it's one of those things where it may not even be deliberate from that person, that client, customer.
No, yeah.
I think it's more around, actually, sometimes you just, there's only so much value you can add to that customer, client, etc.
Absolutely. And people have personal lives, and it's it's easy to say, don't involve your personal in your work life, but it's a very difficult thing to do as well. So sometimes we do forget that people might have stuff going on in their own lives. People move on, and all of a sudden a new person comes into that role in the company and doesn't see your business to be as valuable as the previous person. So there are elements of that as well.
Yeah.
But I think I've always found that there's no use keeping hatred and negativity about somebody moving on. I think you've got to accept that and look and think, how can I learn from this, and how can I get better from this? And there was times that clients left us on a very bad note, completely unexpected. Some that didn't even pay, the thousands of pounds they racked up in accounts, not to mention any names, and that didn't mean that we were not going to look at what we could have done better as a company. So I think it always starts with what's going on at home before you look anywhere else.
Yeah. Do you think, because I've been fortunate enough to be in business and grow and scale and adapt and be in a position where I think there's always some people who are saying there's something going on in the economy or COVID or et cetera, et cetera. I mean, is it a mindset thing as an entrepreneur, as an owner? Because I've always been of the mind of yes, there's stuff going on, but actually your output can then fix your like if it's a revenue problem, then there's a solution for it. If it's a marketing problem, you can fix it. It's down to you to fix it, regardless of the economy's in bad shape. A lot of people have said to me the creative space is challenging.
Yeah.
Right now, in comparison to maybe when COVID was really good, for example, where there was loads of money floating around. But it's actually, I think for me, you've got to focus on what you're doing, and I think that's the key. But I mean, in your experience, have you? Is it kind of a catch-all kind of? Oh, they're just saying it because the economy's hard, or as maybe as an excuse.
Look, I mean, there's no doubt the economy is very different to pre-COVID, but then it's also very different to 2009, when there was a huge crash, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's just a constantly sort of evolving situation. Yes, I do believe it's very difficult now to do business, no matter what field you're in. But there are some fields which feel legislation change particularly, they feel it a lot more than some businesses. But I think you're right to say you can navigate through anything with a very positive mindset. And I think if you fold as a business, but you've given it your absolute everything, you'll sleep peacefully at night. And that's for me personally, and I felt that in a situation. I mean, 2023 to 2024 financial year was our worst performing year as a business, and it was also the year that we rebranded. And there was a lot of sleepless nights there because revenue was, rock bottom. We'd employed people that year, doubled our workforce because we were looking to go, north, and ended up going south as a business. And naturally along that is a lot of doubt because you think, should I have employed these 6 people? Should I have done this? Should I have done that? And it's easy to say in hindsight that actually I'm worried then, but you generally do worry at that point. So I think it's a mindset and how you navigate. And the thing that got me through was just mindset. I think I am just so resilient, like, to anything. I think right now in my life, where I'm just like.
Do you think that comes from your years of experience in business and knowing that actually sometimes you've just got to, what I would call, grunt it or push for it to you just figure it out?
I think it's both of those elements, but I think for me the biggest thing is upbringing. My dad was a very resilient character, hugely resilient. Sorry, not was, is still a very. He's still there. He's an extremely resilient character, and a completely uneducated man, which I must add to this story as well. So to see him, as a migrant in this country with little to no education, he still doesn't speak English fluently. And it was like, this guy struggled, and he struggled so much, but he made it. He made it in his career and in his life. And it was like a lot of that played on my head at that point. And I don't think those things sit well with you, or you don't draw on those things sometimes in life. But when it really matters, those things will come in, and you'll know what your metal's like at that point as well, and how strong you are.
Do you think that was like a key in respect to like how well you've now done, like that, having that upbringing and having that, I guess, those values or what could be described as the correct values being installed into you? Even if it was like an information sponge point, like you as a kid
100%.
just taking that information, sort of saying, well, this is the upbringing I had.
I mean, 100%. But the thing is, I think I didn't realise that till I was about 35. So there's no like one fit solution to this. It's just when it's going to hit you, and it hit me a couple of years back. The big change came from COVID. To be honest, COVID was a blessing for us as a company. I mean, that's not because we made money off unfortunate situations, but it gave me an opportunity to come out of the operation and be like, pause, because it's not something we could have done the way we were going at that time. We were climbing as a business. There was no structure, there was nothing, and it was just like, this is going to be a massive train crash one day. And COVID came and just put the brakes on everything, and it allowed us to restructure. So when we came out of COVID, I'd say that's my real journey in business started then. Because all of a sudden now I'm responsible for totally different things. Because now I'm actually acting like a director. I'm not now, stuck in the operation. And there were so many things that were falling off the side. So it was about coming in, containing that, and then restructuring the business through that. And then certainly obviously the rebrand came behind it. There is that, and obviously the resilience side. I'm for me, I learned that from my dad, and I have a huge admiration for the man. And that's to say, I rub shoulders with a lot of businessmen, but I take my dad's advice. very seriously in life. I always have. But I don't think you as a child or as an adolescent at the time, like, will particularly understand that. But if you're exposed to that environment, I think it does rub off on you at some point. And for me, I want to be like him.
Yeah.
Like, I look at him and I think, just the way he stands and acts and stuff, right? So, huge influence on my life, yeah.
Do you think it's changed how you show up as a leader, or even in your marketing maybe as well? Like that core, like you want to in some ways make him proud first, is what I'm sort of hearing from you. Would you say?
I think I don't really think in that way, to be honest. Like, for me, it's not about making other people proud. Like, I think as long as you're on the right journey, I think honesty is very important in business. And I sleep very well at night, no matter what the situation is on the day. Everybody knows me, knows that once this guy is out, he's out for the night. So, and I think a lot of that comes from your ethos, and there are many shortcuts you can take, or there is the difficult untraveled routes that you can follow as well, or create yourself along the way. And I think I'm more sort of on that journey of testing my limits and also just not stressing out, along the way. And there are times where you obviously get stressed within business, right? But I think as a director, you've always got to have that sort of facade where everything's okay. And sometimes it's not, but you need to have that because you need to always give your staff and your company the assurance that you've got it under control, because the buck does stop with you, the director.
To install that confidence into the team?
I'd like to think they're confident without that, but I think what's your problem as a businessman should not rub off onto your team, because it's for you to deal with and put those things right. And I'd like to think we've created enough leaders now within our organisation that those sort of mistakes won't be repeated again. But that, again, is no one's fault. That's your responsibility as an owner or a managing director of a company.
As I say, do you think people struggle with taking accountability for themselves? Like when things go wrong in business or when things go wrong, like they're more likely to go, oh, it's your fault, rather than it's my fault and it's what I could have done better.
I think it's an easier route these days. And society kind of allows you to get away with that now. Do you know what I mean? But I think in your heart of hearts, you always know when you could have done something better. And I'm that kind of person where even if something has 0% my fault within it, I'd be thinking, what could I have done better? Or what could I have done to negate this issue? Is there anything?
Do you think
that
what makes you stand out though? Because if you're going to say the culture of maybe the country or like the and on average it's externally. Surely the unique advantage could be, actually it's my fault. How can I do it better? What can I do?
I think any great leader, let's go back. I don't consider myself great in any sort of way, I don't think I stand out in any sort of way there. But one thing that I've noted is like great leaders, whether they're businessmen, politicians, war generals, whatever, there's a lot of accountability. There's a lot of responsibility they take. And I don't think you can really take responsibility unless you hold yourself accountable. I know that might not make sense, but in my head it does. So I think
that's really true, and I think that you have to take a self-accountability to what goes wrong, right? Like I've spoken in content quite a lot about last year was really hard. Economically, business-wise, etc. Now, I could go down the approach of, well, it was a harder year, and it was financially this, and there was political uncertainty, and this and this and this. Or I could say, well, what am I doing?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Like, how am I showing up? How am I leading with value?
Yeah.
Am I leading in the right way? What's my office structure like? What's my business structure like? And then what I did was actually go, okay, right. So clearly something isn't working. Right. So let's go back to basics. Let's restart everything. Let's replan the business model. Let's replan marketing. Let's replan everything. And then, funnily enough, when I executed on those things changed. My results changed. Yeah. So I think for me, especially something that you can't overly control, right? Like who's in the government, what the government policy is, etc., etc. that's why you should focus on you. That's why
Yeah.
you should focus on what you're doing and what your key is, I
Yeah.
guess, in some ways. But what do you think's missing in marketing right now that people maybe don't look at, or like either what you're doing specifically, or maybe what you're seeing as like potential opportunities?
What I've seen, because we engaged with a lot of marketing companies before we decided to go with the one we did, it was just like how bad the quality of stuff is out there. And I don't know whether it's just that people settle for, whatever's kind of fed to them, or don't challenge back enough on things. And for us, I was like, no, I don't want to look like a Pret or a Starbucks, because those things are fucking done. Like, I don't want to be that brand. No, I don't care how they're presenting their material. It makes no sense to what we do. And, the comeback from some of the marketing companies was, oh, yeah, but, you're operating in a different domain. Yeah, we're operating in the aviation domain. It's a huge domain to this country. I mean, you saw what happened when aviation shut down with the ash cloud. Yeah. I said, we're operating in a very high marketable area. But I don't need to be another one of these brands. So there's this whole, I think in marketing, they've kind of got these slots in their head. Where, oh, okay, you're in hospitality, so let's just follow the footprint of this company. You're in travel, let's follow the footprint of this. No, it needs to be personal to you as a company. And I think no matter what size you are, I think you've got to have that arrogance and you've got to have that strength and be like, no, this is shit. I'm sorry. Yes, you might be saying to me this is going to cost me £5,000 a month, but I do not value this at £5,000 a month. Like, this content is shit. And it was until we took that stance, we were able to filter out the companies that we actually wanted to work with. And it ended up actually being a company that had absolutely minimal experience in marketing, had a very strong presence in videography. They did some of our content. We sat down and said, we'd love the opportunity to market for you. And I was sold on the directors of that company. And I think that's a huge valuable lesson, that don't just go out into the market and think, I'll go to the marketing agency that does marketing for X, Y, and Z. No, that will not be the necessary fit for your company. You need to find the necessary fit for your company. So overall, I think it's a huge gap in the market there. If somebody's willing to come in a company and work personally with smaller businesses, I think it's a huge market, because everybody wants to catch the big fish. And big fish will potentially have the budgets just to pay and be like, yeah, the campaign didn't really work out. But as a small business, you can't really afford to do that. Every campaign has to work out. And whether you're small, whether you're a medium-sized business like we are, it has to work, because you're paying a lot of money for that to work. So, huge gap in the market. I think there aren't many companies that I would look at and think there's a good reputation there, even though they work with big brands, because they will just consider you a small fish and think that they can pull the wool over your eyes. And I think it's very important, no matter what size you are, that you're the captain of your ship.
Yeah.
No matter how small it is, how big it is, you've got to lead by example there. And if you have to have the loudest voice, then you've got to have that as well.
I'm glad you mentioned video, because I think sometimes people, they're overwhelmed by it, they're concerned by it.
Yeah.
They're like, well, I mean, why do you use it? Right, was the key, the question there. But like, I think there's so much that there's like, from my experience, there's psychology around like, oh my God, I sound like a dick on camera, or like, I don't like the sound of my voice, or this is how I look. But there's also then like the tactics, or like the tech side, right? Now, obviously, if you're bringing in a videographer, you don't need to worry too much about the tech side. But I still think you should, at some principle, you should understand it. I mean, why did you, because you mentioned that you leaned into it. I mean, why did you lean into it?
I was obviously introduced to yourself into videography. I didn't have any, we know videos get made, but it wasn't something you ever gave, second thought to. For me, it was just kind of like, okay, I need to stop worrying about how I look or sound on camera. Like, just be genuine to who you are, like what you're talking about. If it produces great content, it does. If it doesn't, whatever. it's not the end of the world. And obviously, it was a changing landscape at the time as well. I think all of a sudden, Instagram changed its algorithms, like videos, and reels and all these new terms are coming out, and I'm like, what the hell's actually going on? And so yeah, it was just something that came about, and for us, because we're hospitality and retail catering, imagery and videography is a huge aspect of what we do, as part of marketing as well. Of course, you can't just keep marketing with, let me take a picture of this and just keep sticking on social media. It doesn't really work that way. So for us, it was like, okay, we need to open our horizons here and actually look at things that work, and just keep yourself open-minded in the process.
I think it's something that people should always try, and then see what the data then tells you, right? In whatever the campaign is, whether you're doing short form, long form, etc., etc. But I think it would be important when talking about data to think about AI, right? We're seeing an AI boom. Do you see it as we're all maybe in trouble, or some people, you're very obviously service based in respect to what you do, so it might not be as relevant, but is there elements of AI in your business? Do you utilize it? Or have you gone the other way and said, actually, no, we're going to lean into the fact that we are doing it ourselves, and we're not maybe using it as a utilizational tool? Because I see it as a tool that can be sharpened rather than it replacing you.
I mean, there were people in our team that were huge believers in AI. And there are elements of it that we use, no doubt. But I feel with what we do, if we invest too much into or rely too much on AI, I think it will stop your mind from working. And I think it's very important that you're engaged consistently.
From just a cognitive ability.
Cognitive ability. And I think you don't want to get into a situation where, you're relying on technology to tell you what to do, because then all of a sudden you're not problem solving yourself. Or, use it where you can, don't get me wrong, if you're stuck or whatever. But I just think that there are certain aspects of business, old school values, that no matter, they've tested all elements of time and survived. So technology important, AI important, but I don't think it's do all and end all.
No, I think that's a really important reflection. I think it can be, and I'm using the analogy of you sharpen the knife and then use it, right? Because I think it's a tool, and we need to be careful with how we use the said tool. But for me, I'm also building habits around doing more physical reading, right? Because I'm aware that if I use AI, my cognitive ability may become less. So I'm how can I actually increase my cognitive ability with effort and energy, right? And I think for me, that's the difference, and that's why I think you can still be sharper. But were you always maybe looking at because I think when we look at maybe the arbitrage, or maybe we're looking at for an advantage as a whole, were you always someone who maybe looked at technology and saw the opportunities it could give? Because I think sometimes people, they sort of put their defense mechanism up and go, no. We're not going to use it. We're not going to do that because it's scary and new.
You've got to use technology. It's not, a side story, but a family friend, he owns about 20 to 30 industrial units in West London. And he's a landlord on all 30, and he accumulates rent of all 30, is the managing agent of his own estate, charges his own service charges as well. So huge business. And in COVID, he had an issue where his bookkeeper caught pneumonia and was hospitalized. So he called me and said, I need some help with software and accounting. And I remember driving to his place thinking, there's just going to be so much advanced systems here because it's a huge business. So I don't really know what I'm going to be able to advise him on. When I got there, I was completely shocked that he had no accounting system, no software, and he was doing everything manually. To the point where he was even adding up sums on a piece of paper, or his ledger, physical ledger. And I was like, and these are not small figures, 7,200, 9,229, and he's calculating all this on paper, and he's got this account running he's got a book per tenant running, and I'm like, shit, there's no way they can't be mistaken this. There is absolutely no way. So his first job for me was, I want to move all of this onto an accounting system.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I thought, like, that is just madness. Like, it's absolute madness. And I remember setting up Zero for him. And I mean, I'm no Zero professional, right? We have a team that runs our accounts and stuff, but he wanted this to be a personal favor. So I remember shifting all of these physical ledgers onto an accounting software, and the sums were wrong by like thousands. So his first comment to me was, I need to recover this £62,000, which is owed to me in rent. When we actually shifted everything onto a ledger, the figure was about 225,000, which was owed to him. So it's like nearly 3 times what he thought was owed. And that was his change at the age of 62 towards technology, that I need to adapt. And that was the point where he was like, no, I
Was it an
can't.
eye-opener for him?
Sorry?
Was it an eye-opener?
I think it opened.
Like, how did he react?
I think it
when
opened everything that he had within him, because he was just like, he goes, I don't even know how many years I've been losing money for, which is the main thing. And he always had tenants, I said, and came to him like, you know, this rent figure is wrong. And he was like, no, he's adamant it's right. And I was like, an accounting system will put all that to bed. All of a sudden, the queries went down by like 90%. People stopped querying their bills because it was all automated. Each tax code was set. Every expense was set. And I mean, that was like, okay, there's also no time limit to when a person can wake up and see that they need to adapt to technology. And coincidentally, he got very ill last year himself. So he had his son come in and take over the business. And it was a very seamless handover because everything was sorted. So you could easily, you'd have to spend some time kind of understanding what's going on here. But it was handed over with something in place that you can just pick up and go with it.
Yeah.
Opposed to like, why is this or why is that or why is that? Everything was annotated. So yeah, look, you have to adapt. I don't think you can as a business. I mean, we didn't start using software till quite late into our life, business life as well. It was like 3 or 4 years in, we were creating invoices off Excel and that kind of stuff. And I was like, this can't be the way. And then slowly we've adapted to stuff. There are things that I think are really unnecessary in business as well. You don't need technology for absolutely everything. But yeah, basics like accounting and stock management, staff management, telematics on vehicles. You've got to have that. I mean, we had one of our drivers had a terrible crash last month, and the police wanted to know, what speeds were both vehicles travelling at, and we were able to prove that because we had the telematics. And the third party wasn't able to do that, which, favoured us as a business because we were able to prove that we were within, or our driver was within the speed limit.
Yeah.
Didn't harshly brake. So technology is a lifesaver in certain places, and you've got to have it for the basics of your business. Yeah.
You're specifically, obviously, a very niched business in
Yeah.
regards to the sector that you serve. Have you always been that way? And if so, was that a very conscious decision from day one to be like, I'm going to serve this?
Nope. Aviation just came about, to be honest. Well, I say it came about, but I kind of think you set your own destiny in some ways. We were so busy trying to survive as a company, but it was just like customer focus.
Yeah.
Make sure the customer gets everything they can from you, even if it means you're losing something. Just give your customer absolutely everything and make them feel special. And we do that till date. So in some ways, business is a funny thing because you can never say, I set out to do this and it happened. Because I think you've got to, like, a lot of things happen around it and you end up taking a different route. So, I mean, I discuss aviation a lot, but we work heavily with construction. We work heavily with tech companies as well. And we have a huge footfall in the city as well. And none of those things were ever targeted. Like, I don't think we actually knew what we wanted to do when we started business. We just knew we wanted to serve food and, you know, have a business as such, right? So it was like, okay, how do we do that now? And I think along the way, your business will adapt. Things will come up. You'll see value. For us, it was about understanding our niche. And I don't think we understood our niche until post-COVID, which is scary because that was like 10 years into the business. 10 years? 7, 8, sorry, maybe 8 years into the business. But it was like, what is our niche? Our niche is not aviation.
Yeah.
Because there's a hell of a lot of companies that operate within that. Our niche is short lead times. You get hold of anybody at any time of the day or night. We will solve your problems. And if we don't, we will make sure we've done everything possible to try to solve that problem for you as a client. Now, there are some clients that have my number specifically, and they will only call me in situations because although I'm the director of the company and we have an amazing workforce, I've built that relationship with them personally when I was building the company out. And I can understand why they only want to come through to me. I totally get that. But my attitude towards them doesn't change irrespective of my position in the company. And we distill that like through our staff, completely distill it through our staff. That nobody's bigger than the company. We help a client in any given situation that we can. If we are closed for the day and something comes up for somebody, we will do everything we can to make sure that we solve that problem for them. And we've become that. I think that's been our niche. Our niche is we are problem solvers. And that's helped us like also recruit the right people. And people don't come to this company thinking, you know, I'll just spend 9 to 5 behind a desk and I'm done. They're problem solvers. And we make sure they become problem solvers. And our retention rate's amazing. I mean, you know, we've had one staff member leave in the last 2 years, which is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, there are obviously niggles. There are obviously things that, you know, staff feels management can do better or management feels ownership can do better. But I think that's a healthy relationship and it's good to have that open dialogue. But it's so important to treat your staff well. And that doesn't mean just money or pay. I think just an attitude, sometimes just asking people how they are, talking about the football or having a normal conversation makes people realise that actually you're a normal person yourself.
Yeah. I was going to say, I mean, I guess in a business your size, is there a level of all the directors are in today kind of like, oh, it's really scary, and then if so, how do you either defuse that or lead with empathy to be like, hey, I'm a human too?
I think because I've never really come in like wanting to feel important. I think because I was, you know, working the fields, as you can say, when I first started. I've kept the same attitude now. If someone's a new starter or hasn't been around or hasn't got to know me because of the size of the business now, so they don't probably interact with me as much, they're put to ease by the older staff because they're like, this guy is actually really calm and really chill. Like, he'll come in and be like, you know, let's order some pizza. Or did anybody watch the football or the cricket or whatever? I mean, it's like we have our company WhatsApp groups, and I was at the cricket India-England the other day, and I'm sending in the group chat, you know, a photo of myself at cricket, but that helps people just feel like, you know, I'm not intentionally doing that. I'm just doing that because I've always done these kind of things. And there are staff that say, you know, they don't feel like sometimes that I'm the owner of this company just by how I act, how I am. I'm very relaxed. Mistakes are fine. I think we've always said that, look, it's fine to make a mistake, but don't let it become a repetitive mistake and we're not learning from. So it's that yin and yang. I think you've got to find the balance. For me, it's very hard to be serious with people, especially my day-to-day staff, because I think their life is serious enough without me having to add to it. Our work is serious enough without me having to add to it. So I try to, you know, just be chill around them. If there's problems, I'll take that up with my higher management, and we'll deal with it away from our team. But I think it's very important to have that balance as well.
Do you think, as a founder, as a director, as a leader, that maybe not you specifically, but people, those people in the question, leadership founders, they maybe have an ego problem, and if so, like, is that maybe their undoing sometimes? Like they have a massive ego, they care about the car, they care about the house, they're keeping up with the Joneses,
Yeah.
but they don't necessarily lead with maybe the correct, what I would describe at least as the correct values. And do you think that has a strong impact as from a leader, from a founder, from a kind of how you show up for your staff, your employees, your higher management, etc.?
I think so. I mean, the people with, if you've got the nice car, the big house, you've made it in some elements in life, and that's amazing for you as a person. I'm really happy for people that are able to do that.
But do you think it comes from an insecurity sometimes?
From insecurity, did you
Like
say?
they're doing it. Like I've got the car because I don't maybe love myself as much, or like I'm trying to fill a hole potentially in their own self.
I think everyone's trying to fill a hole in some way within themselves. I think we all have that. I mean, there isn't a perfect person out there.
No, of course.
Let's start with that. We all have our blemishes. End of the day, and there are things that we can always improve on. But I've been in business long enough to see both aspects. I've seen people that feel like they need to show their hard work or remind people how hard they've worked by showing possessions.
Yeah.
And they do that more for others opposed to themselves, which is sad. I think it's quite sad. And I don't mean that in a horrible way, but I genuinely think like I'd hate to be in that position myself as a person. Starting out younger, I was obviously the general perception around business. One day I'll have a really nice car, and I'll wear those clothes, and I'll wear, I'll buy this and I'll buy that. But I think once you're fully invested in your business, all those things would just not matter anymore. Like for me, it doesn't matter right now that I'm wearing discounted Next Aspidrills, or I'm wearing a certain branded top. It matters nothing to me whatsoever. Because I think
more about the quality of the person then?
I think,
or the quality of the founder, the quality of the leader?
It's like what's your higher purpose? Like you've got to think that's what you've got to think of. And I think if your purpose goes beyond materials, you've got a bigger purpose in life. You're not thinking. I mean, I get absolutely no joy. I mean, I love my car. Don't get me wrong, I love sitting in my car. But if I get a phone call, the problems are still as bad as they would be on a bus or on a train.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, that materialistic thing matters in no way.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, I think it's like, you've got to be like, okay, why am I in this? But what am I about as well as a person? And people lose one of those two aspects somewhere along in the business. They either forget why they're doing what they're doing, or they'll forget who they are. And for me, I can't do that because I grew up eating dinner on the floor. I never sat on a dining table because traditionally, my dad grew up, there was no dining tables, in his household in 1960, whatever it was, in India, because he was from a very poor background, post-partition of India, Pakistan. So they grew up sitting on floors and eating. So he distilled that in us. And there are times where we're just out and about and we're having a working lunch and I'll just sit on the curbside because I'm totally happy with that. Like, because I don't need to change as a person, I feel, to show my status or to show who I am. Like, for me, I'm another person in this world.
Do you think by having that level of humility, that like humbleness, will keep you, I guess, in some ways empathetic or like connected with every layer of your company in respect to management and the people and the staff and gives you more, I guess, humanity in respect to how you lead?
Absolutely. Because you'll be a human before you're anything else. A human that actually feels other people's pain and their situations, opposed to just your own consistently. Yeah. But it's very important for your personal life as well. Because, I've got 2 young kids. I was at sports day yesterday with them, and my he's just four now. And he's starting school in September. So yesterday was his sports day and today's his last day at school. And the parents were all sitting together and we're talking about schools, and we talked about, where he's going to be schooling and where they're going to be schooling. And it was just like an amazing conversation because no one's judging anyone because everyone's on the same footing at this moment in time.
Yeah.
But you start to get a feel as life goes on, as you grow older, that it becomes who's going to the independent school, who's going to the state school. Oh no, they must have so much money because his or her son's going to the independent, or his or her daughter's going to the independent school. But it matters nothing if you as a person still have humility,
Yeah.
I think, and it doesn't matter whether you're sending your kids to a certain aspect or spending X amount on yourself, it's how you are as a person, how you treat people. I think it's hugely important, and even more so when you know that the person you are treating well can't give you as much value back as you can give them. I think that's a huge aspect of you as a character.
Yeah. I think also it's a pay it forward mentality to an
Yeah.
extent, right? Like I think what you output will also reflect back on you in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, etc.
At some
You know.
point, it will definitely reflect back on you.
Whether you believe in karma, whether etc. Right? Whether maybe don't go about our belief system, but like whatever your belief system is,
Yeah.
there's always a crossover there. And I think, especially when we go back to business, I think that's true in marketing as well.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of the work I'm doing at the moment is actually how can I scale out what I'm doing and then build systems so that it allows me to be more present for clients. So then in turn I can do a better job, which in turn means then when I take on new clients, I can ensure that the quality is the same, right? And actually, I think partly because I will say no to certain projects or certain clients or certain things. Do you look at that when you potentially look at a client or working with a customer, etc.? Do you say no sometimes? And if so, where does that mindset come from to be able to have the humility, I guess, or the confidence to say, actually, no, you're not the right fit for us?
I think as a leader, you're responsible for a lot within your organization. And I think you realize that the more you grow as a business. It's something which is easy enough to ignore if you're stagnant or if you're growing through, the growing pains, right? And it's a very painful area when you're growing as a business. And I mean, by no means is Anand a multinational business, but I feel the pain of it every day when we grow. And majority of the time it's financial pain, because the bigger you become, the more restraints you get on your cash flow. And there's times you're thinking, I just want to be small again. I just want to be that business that everything was done on account, payment on receipt or whatever, right? But all of a sudden now we've got payment terms. There's clients that rack up huge bills, but we know we're not going to get the money for 60 days or 30 days. And, there's clients there was a client that came in, and we're absolutely wonderful with each other now, but they started and they said, we won't pay you for 90 days, but we'll give you this much business. And everybody was like, oh, that's an amazing deal to be done. And it was somebody from our team, actually, because when I consulted him, and he said, there's absolutely no point to take this business on, because if this client's going to be giving us £150,000 a month, we won't have that for 90 days. So all of a sudden we would have racked up something like 500,000 in 3 months. Or this business would have racked up 500,000 with us and that's a huge risk, because we only get paid 150,000 out of that 450 after 3 months.
Yeah.
And then it becomes that again. And then it becomes that again. And if that goes down tomorrow, we're going to be losing 500,000 as a business. And that's not just the revenue, there's the cost that comes with it as well.
Yeah, because you have to pay out the cost anyway.
Of course.
And I think sometimes when people look at business, they maybe don't appreciate it, right? They'll see them with the nice car, they'll see them with the new studio, whatever it is. But I look at it and go, oh, that's a lot of money.
Yes.
My
Absolutely.
God, that's a lot of costs.
Yeah, of course.
Right? And I think it's how, I guess in some ways we develop as people to stomach those costs as leaders.
Definitely. And I think Carlton, it's got to be your attitude as well.
Yeah.
I think you've got to, I do not think that there is a company in the world, I do not think there's a single company in the world that should ever come to you and try to take advantage of the size of your business.
Yeah.
Or play on the vulnerabilities. But unfortunately they do, because that's the way the world works. And that's where I think you've got to show your mettle. Like, how much do you value yourself as a business? How much do you value your services as a business? But be able to back that up with quality as well, which is a fine line, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean you've got to have the best product in the market, but absolutely deliver on everything that you say you're going to deliver on. If it costs you to deliver on it, you deliver on it irrespective. You don't just shortcut and then leave yourself exposed in the market for having a bad reputation. But I think it's self-belief. But I know that doesn't come when there's no income or little income, because only self-doubt's there at that point. But my last 2 years in particular in business have taught me, gotta value yourself.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you go and shit on people's parade, or you go and mistreat clients, or if somebody comes in trying to bargain with you that you mistreat them. You just got to hold your firm in a polite way, but you've got to know what your business is about, and you've got to know where you're strong and where you're weak, and you've got to be able to make the right decisions. And sometimes the first decision is not always the best decision.
Yeah.
But leave the ball open where you're still able to have dialogue with clients. There's times where we made, mistakes. We've misjudged, and we wouldn't be human if we didn't. But it's how do you react to that?
Yeah.
How do you go back and manage that? How do you have the humility to say, we got this wrong, but still be able to have that relationship with your client?
I think as well, and I had a very fortunate conversation a couple of weeks ago about this, and it was like, we just worked with a brand new client, and one of the things they said to me about why they chose us or me, however you want to perceive it, is that because I was the most expensive out of the ones they were talking about, and for like maybe a newcomer or etc., that sounds weird, right? Because it's like, why would you win the work but you're the most expensive? And I think from what they told me, it sounded like it was like, well, I've got the gonads, I've got the balls, or whatever you want to call it, I've got the confidence to say, no, this is how much my work, this is what I'm going to commit to price wise, but then also I'm going to follow it up with the value that I'm going to lead with as well.
Huge.
Do you think sometimes people get really challenged on price?
Always. You're always going to be challenged on price.
And then how do you deal with that? I guess with them, with the conversation, like, is there certain scenarios where you're like, no, we're going to maybe negotiate by this much, but our final price is non-negotiable here?
I think there's two ways to do it. I mean, I've been on the opposite end of that spectrum where I've bargained just for the sake of taking on the business, and I've negotiated myself into positions that are like the least favourable in the end. But it's easier said than done as well. But I think you've got to know your costs, know where you sit, know what you're trying to achieve out of that deal, because sometimes you take on a deal with the hope that it's going to lead to bigger and better things, which is fine if you know your market. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen in that way, but it's a calculated risk.
Do you think sometimes you have to take something that's maybe not ideal client, if it is just I need to make this money? Or would you still say no?
For us, I don't think we really have that, because we're quite niche in what we do. So everyone that comes to us generally needs us, or we need them in some aspects as well. But there are, you won't know until you start working with someone, I always say. And the ones that you think are going to be troublesome end up actually being the better clients. And the ones that you think, because they're a big brand, sometimes extracting money can be an absolute pain, which is why relationships are very important. And you've got to go above and beyond. A business deal is not just, here's my service, I've provided it, here's my invoice, you pay it, thank you very much. It's all the stuff in between, the dialogue, the things that you don't cost. It's impossible to cost a project, you know that.
Yeah.
To the T. You can't do that. Because we never add our own time into that, really, if we think about it, as a business. And even if you add your own time as a calculation, they'll still be like, oh shit, I'm still spending too much time on this business. But it depends what your end goal is. If your end goal is like, I just want to be done with this client, get their money, and I don't care whether they contact me again, then that's a very different mindset. Or if you want to always leave you never know when a client might need you, that's a very different mindset as well.
I think that's true, and I think that sometimes maybe I call it sometimes staying your welcome to an extent, because I think with some clients you may feel it yourself and go, actually I've actually added the value, or they're growing, or they're in a position where or I'm growing, or the other way around, right? Or actually we're not the right fit anymore, and it might be that you need to step away potentially from them for a period of time, or vice versa in that respect. But for people who maybe want to connect with you, see more about what you do, check out the new rebrand, where's best for people to reach out to?
Our website's the best place, so an-and.co.uk. Same on social media, Instagram as well, and I'm always available to answer questions. If I'm not, someone from the team will be. And if you're ever at Heathrow, give us a shout. We'll try and find you somewhere and come and say hi. So yeah, we're elusive, but we're still reachable in some aspects as well. Yeah.
Fab. And if you were going to wind the clock back, say 10 years, maybe 15 years, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Work on yourself. Like, just work on yourself. Seriously. Like, every day. Just be better every day. And don't worry about the end goal. Just look at yourself and like process. Everyday process. And just don't give a shit about what other people think. Like, it matters zilch at the end of the day. Because all this, just consider it white noise. And there was times that I got sidetracked a lot because I was worried about how people saw me. And I was a lot younger, no doubt. But it matters zero. It literally does. I mean, I did work experience at Cineworld cleaning bins. That was my first ever job. I swept floors. I've cleaned toilets in COVID as well. And I'm talking about builders' toilets here. I'm not talking like office toilets here, right? I've delivered. I've done delivery jobs. I've never worked at a doctor's. I never worked as a lawyer. I've never worked as an accountant. The jobs that people see as, you need experience in these things. But I had the strongest willpower out of the people that I went to school with. And when I look at where they are now compared to where I am, like, I have to pinch myself sometimes because I'm like, but this person was like, straight A stars and did this and did that as work experience, did this as a job and travelled abroad and all. Like, that's all white noise. That's all white noise. Because there are people that go and travel abroad and live abroad and have fantastic careers, and within 5 years they're back in the country. And they'll sell you the story, like, I got a better job back home. No. Like, you the more you work on yourself, the wiser you become, I think. But that doesn't mean, like, you consider everybody else as idiots. I think you've just got to just absorb it as a sponge. And I see that with my son because he's 4. Everything you say to him, he just absorbs as a sponge right now. He'll remember things that I said to him a year ago. I don't remember them. But I know I said them because it sounds like I said them, right? But I don't think that ever changes, if you know what I mean. Like, I think you'll be a sponge your whole life if you are open to it. It's just feelings that get in the way. As you grow older, you don't want to be made to feel a certain way, or you don't want to be open to people's advice. And not everything that people advise you on is going to benefit you, but have the humility to be open to it. I think that's such a huge aspect, and I wish I had done that sooner. And I have no complaints about where I am now. But if I was to give my younger self advice, I would do that. Like, have the confidence, but that will come from knowledge as well. And the first time I experienced that was when I was playing professional cricket, and I didn't have the confidence to go any further because I hadn't focused enough on the process. I'd focused so much on the outcome that I'd forgotten to work on myself in the process. And it was like, okay, the technical ability is amazing. The physical aspect, not anymore, but back then, fit as a fiddle. But what was lacking was a mindset because I hadn't trained my mind enough to believe in my own ability. And I think that was the first lesson in life. And automatically, because that was the norm for me, I applied the same formula when I first started business. I just didn't have the ability to believe in anything. But when you are shunted sideways, this way, that way, eventually, you shake out of this, right? And I was thankful for all the lessons that I've learned along the way because I do firmly think they make you what you are. And no doubt in 10 years' time, if we do this podcast again, I'd be giving my 37-year-old a total different set of advice. So, yeah, I think, look, just process every day. Work on it. There's no time frame. No time frame. Don't think, it's been 6 years or 7 years and I haven't moved forward. Okay, but next year could be completely different. 2022 was huge for us as a business, and 2023 was the complete opposite. So there's no knowing what's going to happen out there. If anyone claims they know exactly what's going to be happening out there, they're talking a load of shit. Nobody knows what's going to happen out there, but work on your process. And I mean, look at great athletes. Virat Kohli, who recently retired from Test cricket, huge fan of him. Not for his ability, just his mindset. And I mean, I look at him and I think, he was one out of a billion. Like, India is fanatic about cricket, and the level of standard out there is huge. Like, there are people that could be in other international teams, but they won't get into the Indian team because they're born in India, right? And I look at his mindset, and one of the things he said was when his dad passed, it made him realize how lucky he was to be in the fortunate position he was. And that just made him change everything. His diet, his dedication to the sport, he became a great as a result of that. But he worked on the process every day. He didn't set out to be great. He just said, I want to be the best version of myself, like every single day. And he worked on every single aspect of his personal life, his professional life, in order to do that. And that's where I am now. I think I'm like, okay, I need to get fit again. I need to be a better dad every day. I need to be better at dealing with people every day. I need to be a better son every day, a better brother every day, whatever it is. But I need to be better every single day. And yeah, there'll be times where you go backwards, but get up and move forward the next day as well. So mindset, I know I'm not going to have a six-pack tomorrow, or maybe even not next year, but I'll keep trying every single day, and that's what will keep you sharp, I think, between the years.
And focus on that 1%. Thank you ever so much for listening. Thank you ever so much for coming back and joining me. If you did enjoy this episode and you would like to see more like it, make sure to be subscribed. And I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section down below. Thank you ever so much. Thank you so much for coming on. And I'll see you very, very soon.